Mamon, sipurei masios, the sixth story, the humble king. Once there was a king who had a wise advisor. The king said to the wise man, "There is a king who signs himself the mighty warrior, man of truth, and humble person. I know that he is a mighty warrior because his land is surrounded by the sea. He has a navy of ships with cannons. They do not let anyone come close to the land. On the side away from the sea there is a quicksand bog surrounding his land. There is only one small path upon which only one man at a time can go. This path is also defended with cannons, and if anyone attacks, they fire the cannons. It is impossible even to come close to his land. However, when he signs himself man of truth and humble person, I do not know if he is telling the truth. I therefore want you to bring me a portrait of that king." The king who was speaking had portraits of every single other king with the exception of the one he was now discussing. No king had that king's portrait, since he kept himself hidden from all people. He kept himself at a distance from his subjects and sat behind a canopy. The wise man traveled to that land. He decided that he must first know the essential nature of that land. One can understand the nature of a land by knowing its humor. In order to understand something, one must know the jokes related to it. There are many types of jokes. Sometimes a person wants to hurt another with his words. When the other shows that he is annoyed, he says, "I was only joking." It is thus written, one exerts oneself casting firebrands, arrows, and deadly weapons, and then says, "I am only joking." There are also cases where someone really is only joking, but nevertheless, the other person is hurt by his words. There are also other types of humor. There is a land that includes all other lands. In that land that includes all lands, there is a city that includes all the cities of that land. In the city that includes all cities, in the land that includes all lands, there is a building that includes all buildings. Here, there is a man who includes everything in that entire building. Here, there is the one who composes all the humor and jokes in the entire land. The wise man took a large sum of money and went there. He saw many types of jokes and humor being composed. From the jokes he understood that the land was totally filled with falsehood, from the beginning to the end. He saw that jokes were being made about how people were cheated and deceived in business, and how when people took a case to court, it was all decided on the basis of falsehood and bribery. Even when someone went to the Supreme Court, there was nothing but falsehood. Humorous skits were made of all these cases. From this humor, the wise man understood that the land was totally full of falsehood and dishonesty, and that there was no truth at all there. He then bought and sold merchandise, allowing himself to be cheated. He took his case to court, and saw that they operated with falsehood and bribery. One day he could give a bribe, and the next day they would not recognize him. He told his case to a higher court, and this was also full of falsehood. Finally he came to the Supreme Court, and this too was full of falsehood and bribery. Finally, he brought his case before the king. When he came to the king, he said, "Over whom are you king? The land is completely full of falsehood from beginning to end. There is no truth at all in it." He then began to describe all the falsehood in the land. Hearing this, the king inclined his ear toward the curtain to listen to the wise man's words. The king was very surprised that there was a man who was aware of all the falsehood in the land. When the ministers of state heard the wise man's words, they were very angry with him. However, he continued describing the falsehood in the land. The wise man then said, "It would be logical to say that since you are king, you are just like the rest, that you like falsehood, just like everyone else in the kingdom. But there's one thing that shows me that you are a man of truth. Since you cannot tolerate the land's falsehood, you keep yourself at a distance from your subjects." With that, the wise man began to praise the king very, very highly. The king was very humble. Wherever he had greatness, he had humility. When a person is truly humble, the more he is praised and made great, the smaller and more humble he becomes. Therefore, when the wise man praised him and spoke of his greatness, the king became very small and humble until he literally became nothing. The king then could not hold himself back. He threw aside the curtain so as to see the wise man. He had to see who knew and understand all this. In doing so, however, the king revealed his face, and the sage saw him. The wise man was then able to paint his portrait and bring it to his king. The ways of Sion, Zion are mourning. Zion, Sion in Hebrew alludes to monuments of all the lands that came together. It is thus written, one shall see a man and build a monument, Sion, next to him. This is the significance of the verse, see, Zion, Sion, the city of our gatherings. In Hebrew, this is Chazei, Sion, Kiryas, Moyadenu. The initial letters of this verse spell out Mitzachek, Chazei, Sion, Kiryas, Moyadeni. Mitzachek, which means to tell a joke. This is the place where all the monuments come together. If a person needs to know if he should engage in a certain type of business, he can know it there. May it be God's will that he rebuild his temple. Amen. Look, see, and understand the extent of these concepts. Happy is he who waits and reaches the point where he can know and perceive even a small degree of the mysteries of these stories. Nothing like this has been heard since ancient times. All the verses and allusions that are cited after some of the stories are only hints, so that people will realize that the story is not something devoid of meaning, heaven forbid. Rabbi Nachman expressly said that he was revealing some hints and verses alluding to the mysteries in the stories, so that people will realize that he was not merely engaging in idle chatter, heaven forbid. However, the mysteries of these stories extend far beyond the grasp of our knowledge. It is deep, deep. Who will find it? Na'anach nachmo na'achman meyuma. Na'anach nachmo